Today, crime is so sophisticated, and I dare say criminals are always a step ahead of the prosecutors. So you have to go the extra mile to catch up with them, overtake them, and bring them to book. Looking at the theme of your conference, it can't have been better chosen, because strengthening coordination and cooperation towards effective cross-border prosecution of transnational organized crimes is the problem of today. Today, criminals are so sophisticated that a person can sit in his boardroom or his bedroom even, and using technology can bring down a whole bank, or can wipe out an entire economy of some of our smaller countries. So we really have to upscale our legislation, our shared experiences, our cooperation to be able to keep our countries safe. Some of the crimes that affect our fragile economies, the architects are normally outside our jurisdiction. They're in the heavens of Europe, America, and elsewhere, but with their local collaborators, they cause havoc to our economies. So, a desire to have legal frameworks that we all embrace and sign to fight cross-border crimes is important. To repatriate proceeds of crimes is important. To limit the limitations of our parochial jurisdictions so that we can be able to deal with a criminal in Mozambique who affects a Kenyan, or a Kenyan criminal who is affecting an Egyptian is important. And here you will need legislatures to pass laws that lessen cumbersome jurisdictional barriers that help us in the fight against crime. As prosecutors, you now have a huge and wide portfolio to keep up with. Terrorism is here with us, and my country, Kenya, has had more than its fair share of the heat. And DPP Nuruddin and his team have been struggling to catch up with these terrorists who sometimes are suicidal. So a fellow who has caused damage to a major establishment with losses of lives and destruction of property, and himself dead or herself dead, leaves you with a mind-boggling idea on how to catch up with those who financed, who planned, who designed, and who gave them comfort to carry out those crimes. This is a challenge that we keep on facing, and we must come to terms with it and be able to deal with terrorism. One of the most difficult issues that you need to deal with as prosecutors, and I get this from a lot of parents who come to me to seek advice, is the now emerging online perversion of our children's morals. Child pornography is just as dangerous to families, to our children, as terrorism is. We need to tackle child pornography, where people sitting in the comfort of their capitals in developed countries are rolling out programs and unleashing them online that pervert the morals of our children and therefore destroy the future of our communities and societies. As prosecutors, that again is a job cut out for you. With the improvement of communication, protection of data, personal data, state data is again very important, that we must be able to protect the state and our people against sophisticated criminals. Stories and cases of monetary transactions going astray are now commonplace. And as prosecutors, I encourage you not to wait to administer the law passed by parliaments, but also to be part of the continuing evolution of legislation to support your work in fighting the ever-increasing sophistication in crimes. I also want to encourage you as our prosecutors to embrace human rights, because in many cases, not everybody brought before courts of law are necessarily the perpetrators of the crime for which we are prosecuting them. And as prosecutors, you are not the investigators. So you must seriously interrogate files brought to you to take to court. And in this, I always like what I learned in my first year in the law school, the words of William Blackstone in 1769 when he said, "It is better to let one guilty man go scot-free than convict an innocent person." So that as we pursue criminals, we have those who are framed up, we have those who are victims of mistaken identity, we have those who just find themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong company. We must also be able to defend the innocent so that they are not caught in the dragnet of guilty as charged, as we sometimes say. In the quest for justice, there is always two sides: the justice for the complainant, justice for the victim. So as prosecutors, you also walk a tightrope and the narrow path of ensuring that those who seek justice and those who are victims of those seeking justice must be balanced in our approach so that we don't trample on any human rights. You've been here discussing many issues. I share what our DPP has said. As Africans, Chinua Achebe said, you must write your story. If you don't write your story, whoever writes your story can distort it, misrepresent you, misdescribe you. So Africa, now we live in a global village, as we call it, and crimes committed 10, 15,000 kilometers away from us affect us directly. But we must start by dealing with issues African. And I like the approach we took as Kenya about 13 years ago, when we became the theater for piracy, young, unsophisticated, unemployed, with nothing to lose, ragtag operators embarked on a process of piracy along our coastline with Kenya, Somalia, slightly veering into Tanzania. And at the time, I was the foreign minister of this country. And we realized that when these young fellows are arrested in the waters of Somalia, Kenyan courts would have no jurisdiction. We realized that in Africa, sometimes we rush to sign treaties, cooperation agreements when the problem arises. I'm happy to hear that as prosecutors, you are moving probably ahead of our leadership, that we need to tackle crimes regardless of our boundary limitations, because that's the only way we can make our continent safe. I fully share in that, and any matter that brings to fruition and actualization of these noble ideas coming to Parliament, I want to assure you that in us you have partners, and we'll be able to do exactly that. Let me end here by encouraging all of us here assembled, the APA Association, that society will only be safe if we put undesirables and criminals after due process behind bars. And an enviable task lies on your shoulders to make sure that you present cogent evidence, strong cases before magistrates and judges to make sure you win your cases. Equally important is that society is not safe simply because we are prosecuting those who commit crimes. It will be even safer if we educate the population on the pitfalls of crime so that we avoid falling into criminal activities. Prevention is always better than cure, and the agencies that Hillary is talking about, the police and corruption agencies, the auditors, the controllers of budgets, and so on, will be able to nip in the bud crimes before they are committed. I wish you well. Enjoy the Kenyan hospitality. Enjoy your stay. And let's work together, because Africa as our continent has great people, has brilliant people, has great resources, and it is you as our prosecutors, among other people, who will prevent the continuing looting and repatriation of our wealth to other places. I'm sure many of you have read How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by the late Walter Rodney. How the skyscrapers out there are part of your sweat. Repatriating our wealth back is a cardinal duty that we all must embrace. Thank you, and may God bless you. I now have a humble duty to declare your conference closed, but encourage you to remain in our country a little longer and share into and enjoy our hospitality. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a few minutes, then we will leave.